Us to say a very good morning and thank you for your time, Mr. Nico Kleynhans.
Good morning to you and also to the listeners.
Now, today is part one. We're talking about budgeting, financial budgeting. And this is important. And next week we'll deal with part two.
Okay, the trigger for this theme was Sunday night when our congregation had their annual general meeting. And thanks to ESCOM, I don't often say that, we had to keep our meeting down to 1 hour.
Sometimes it's a good thing, right?
It was a good thing. We had to move fairly smartly. And what I always find interesting is that churches are often uncomfortable when it comes to dealing with their budgets and making that information public. I'm not sure why it is, whether it is an issue around how to get the budgets presented or whether it's something else. But basically, a budget is a plan that helps us as members of the congregation to understand where the church funds come from. It helps us understand how we allocate those funds, and it also speaks to our priorities as a community. Are we an inward-looking community? Are we an outwards-looking community? Are missions important to us? Is public ministry important to us? How do we spend the money that we receive? And that is really critical because it also helps us as a congregation understand how we are treating our pastors. Because I deal with pastors who contact me and I see how often they are struggling because the congregations don't provide sufficient for them to educate their kids and to allow them to run their households in a responsible way. And that creates tensions in their families. And also, of course, recently, particularly around COVID time, a lot of congregations actually collapsed and they were not able to get their act together again. So it is something that we need to be, it's important that we understand that as Christians. We understand when we're looking at the AGM and the budgets, what are our responsibilities as members? How do we review what we are contributing to our particular churches? How do we review what we are contributing to general ministry, whether it's be inside or outside the congregation? But how do we make ministry possible? But then we have the same thing with our families, and that's really what I wanted to touch on. You see, because without a budget, our families are guaranteed to run out of money every single month before we run out of days in that particular month. It's as simple as that. Because very few of us are disciplined enough to make sure that the money is going to last until the last day of the month. We also have the challenge that if we're working on a cash-only basis, we are unlikely to be saving for emergencies. And so when emergencies hit us, we are not going to be able to meet that. And then we have the added problem of December. We're going on holiday. January, the new school year starts. It's a new uniform. Our kids don't want to stop growing, so we need new uniforms. The schools do not understand that we're running out of money at the beginning of a year, and so we don't have books. We've got endless things we've got to do. It becomes tough for families. So how do we start the process of budgeting? And initially, the process is really quite simple. What I'd like you to do is to get hold of your bank statements for 3 months. Get hold of your credit card statements for 3 months. And all you need to do is to look at each of those transactions and categorize your expenditure. You need to know what your motor car is costing you. What are you paying on that car? What are you paying on the insurance? What are you paying on repairs? What are you paying on petrol? Anything related to the car, you need to understand that. You need to understand what it's costing you to feed your family. So you need to look at how much you spent at Checkers, ShopRite, Pick n Pay, Woolworths, wherever you shop. You need to look at all of that kind of thing so that you can say to yourself, and to your family, because you are going to have this discussion that we're spending 20% of our budget on food. We're spending 15% of our budget on the car, travel. Our electricity bill has now jumped by a double. We need to be looking at this. If we're going to go on a holiday in December, this is where we're going to have problems. So your task for this week, get to understand how you allocate your money. And then next week, we'll deal with what do you do with that and how does that then become part of your budget.
That is so good. And we hope you're going to go and do the homework, people, because this is about helping you. And I always say, if you know that you're aiming towards the December holidays and you want to have a nice holiday, then that gives you an incentive and you can work towards that, not just as an individual, but also as a family. Nico, thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, next week, same place, same time, we'll bring you part